Keto freaks. This is Carl. Do you or someone you know have trouble focusing? You know what I'm talking about. You sit down to read something, try to figure out your monthly budget, write that novel you've been putting off, or maybe you just can't seem to do one task at a time. Well, you may not know this, but I'm a musician as well as a software developer. Programming is a job that requires focus, long periods of uninterrupted work. It's hard for them and for you. I've created Music to Code By. This is music, yes, but it's specifically and scientifically designed to promote focus. Studies show that when math students were exposed to Baroque music between 60 and 80 beats per minute, they did better with comprehension and testing. So I created more modern music that is neither boring nor distracting, but falls within that tempo range. It's just the right mix. I also made the pieces 25 minutes long. That correlates to research that shows we all get brain fatigue after 20 or so minutes of hard focus. The result is thousands of happy customers. Now, you don't have to be a programmer to reap the benefits of Music to Code By. It has been known to soothe restless pets, calm fussy babies, and even help autistic kids relax and fall asleep. Listen to some free samples at musictocodeby.net. Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. I'm Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States, and in February of this year, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In that time, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet for over 2 years. When I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared.
We're going to share the progress of my journey through ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for years in ketosis, and hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail. We've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind that. We hope to share some of that research. So where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
You'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies. We love to cook and we love to eat. So we share some of the great food that we can eat on this diet. Every episode, both of us share a recipe for an essential keto meal that we eat on a regular basis. So, Richard, let's start podcast number 19, the Ketophobia Show. Ketophobia. It just sort of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Things that scare us about keto.
Yeah. So do we have any corrections or apologies from last week, Richard?
Let me see. None, nada, zip, ingenting, and niente, nichevo, and bupkis. We got nothing. I got nothing.
I got nothing.
So, unfortunately, hopefully we'll make a couple of mistakes this week and we'll have something to apologize for.
Definitely. We're getting better at this, I know.
I think so.
So for the newbies, let's reprise. What is a ketogenic diet? Well, we restrict carbs. And some would say eat as few carbs as possible, except that you get from green leafy vegetables, incidentals, broccoli, cabbage, maybe a few nuts, whatever. 20 grams a day is sort of the maximum for the ketogenic diet, although Richard and I are typically 5 grams a day. 50 grams a day seems to be the absolute cap that you should.
That's right.
For even mild ketosis, but less is more. And enough protein to maintain your muscles. And if you're not sure how much protein you should eat based on your body, you can go to the keto calculator, which is linked in the protein show.
Yep.
And everything else that we eat comes from fat, whether it's on our plate or whether it's from that Krispy Kreme we ate a decade ago.
That's right. So somebody in the forum asked, how do I get started? And you had a really good example.
Yes, that's right. This person said, I'm not sure how to get started. There's so much information. It seems so easy and yet so complex. All you guys are saying, do this, do this, do that, do that. I don't know how to get started. And I said, okay, it's actually really easy. Your first day, which you can then extend to the first week or however long you want to do it.
Sure.
Just eat as much as you want of the following kinds of foods: meat and fatty meats, butter, cream cheese, hard cheese, olives, avocados, have a salad with dressing. You have to work out whether that dressing has carbs in it. If you're really not sure, just stick with oil and salt or oil, vinegar, and salt.
Yeah.
Just, absolute zero carb foods. But eat as much as you want. Really, and that's what Atkins told us too. And the reason is that in the very beginning, your goal isn't to lose weight. Your goal is to get fat adapted.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to get your insulin down to a point where your liver can start calling on your body fat for fuel. Now, that's true. It only happens when there's a deficit of fat. But if you start right out of the gate not eating fat, your body isn't going to know what to do. It doesn't know how to process all that fat yet. So you have to train it. And that's what you're doing. You're sort of like training your liver in the first couple of weeks.
In fact, all of your body cells that can burn fat, all of them are becoming better at burning fat. So all your muscle cells, your heart.
Yeah. So right in the beginning, just eat as much as you want of those kinds of foods. And if you get hungry, just eat more of them. Oh, did I say bacon? Yeah, bacon.
Yeah,
bacon and butter. I forgot those two. Typical snack, for hunger control is spread a little cream cheese on some bacon. Make a pound at a time, put it in the fridge, take it out, break them off like crackers.
Nice.
That's what we do.
Nice.
All right. So, Richard, how are we going? How did you do this week?
So I'm actually doing quite well. I'm on day 2 of a 3-day fast. I started at 8 p.m. last night, and it's currently it's almost midnight here in Australia. So I'm 28 hours into a 72-hour fast.
Yep.
And it's Friday midnight, and on Sunday I'm going to break my fast about 8 p.m. on Sunday, so I'll have a big dinner. And I've already chosen a wagyu steak for dinner. Huh. And just before dinner time, I'm going to do a 100K bike ride.
Awesome.
So I'm 3 days of fasting and then 100K bike ride.
That's great.
And I'm still losing weight slowly, but it takes time because I have a high residual base load of insulin. I produce a lot of insulin even when I don't eat anything. So and that puts the floor under my weight loss, and so I have to use strategies like fasting and glycogen depletion through exercise and things like that to get to where I need to.
Yep.
But how are you going, Carl?
Well, just before I answer that, a comment is that one of the reasons that people get confused about, and this plays into our Ketophobia show, one of the reasons people get confused about whether or not you should eat fat, and are afraid of it, is because you can actually lower your insulin level by exercising and eating less.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, but the problem is that if you're not doing 20 grams a day or less, or actually 50 grams, if you're not below 50 grams, you do that, you lower your insulin level and you go for an exercise and you don't eat so much, and okay, your insulin is down for a little while, but then you have a piece of fruit and you think that's healthy. You eat some grapes or something and boom, your sugar goes up.
Up she goes.
And all of that work that you just did is reversed.
Yeah, it's all part of that glucose roller coaster that both of us were on. It's a horrible. I was explaining this to somebody the other day when they asked me what the mental effects of ketogenic diet were, and I said, there are advantages from a brain standpoint, but really for me the greatest advantage is that I feel I can focus without distraction for hours. Whereas when I was a glucose burner, I'd eat something, I'd feel sleepy for about an hour, and then I'd feel alert for maybe 30 minutes, and then I'd feel hungry, and then I'd blood glucose would drop, and then I'd have to go out and eat something else. And sort of every 3 hours I was eating, and I was going through this sleepy because I've just eaten, alert for 30 minutes, and then hungry and distracted because I was hungry, So when I'm in ketosis, I can concentrate for hours on end.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So how am I doing? So here's what happened. I'm at a place right now that's very strange for me, because when I went to Oslo, as I told you before, I had some carby meals, and then I fasted, and then I ate keto most of the time.
Right.
And I came back, and my weight wasn't too bad, but I've had a hard time getting back on my 1 meal a day routine.
Really? So you've been hungry?
Yeah, I've been hungrier, and I chalk it up to those carbs. And even though they were, I kept them in check and I didn't go crazy, it just had this lingering effect. And so I'm finding it really hard to jump back in. And I have been eating ketogenic since I came back completely.
Yeah.
But I think I've been overeating. I think I've been eating too much.
Yeah.
And there is a thing that if you eat too much, even in the macros, you're going to not lose weight, or you're even going to gain weight. Yeah.
It sometimes takes 4 or 5 days to get back into ketosis after you've had an event where you had a lot of carbs, or even a small amount of carbs above your above your 50 grams. It takes you sometimes a week to get back into ketosis. So, isn't
it strange though that right after, my blood sugar was good and everything was fine, but the effects lingered for a few days. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's pushed you out of ketosis and you're not making ketones, your ability to provide energy is dropping, and so your body's starting to get warning signals. It's going to DEFCON 1. It's saying, right now we need to up the intake of energy because we're having trouble supplying enough energy. So
yeah, I get what you're saying, but I almost think that I almost think it's different right now. I think I am in ketosis because I'm not as hungry as I could be when I have carb cravings, and but I just think that I'm at this point where, where I'm just having this lingering effect. So I'm eating more, and I'm eating more of fat and protein. Like, I'm not eating carbs.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm in ketosis, but I just haven't been able to get back to that routine of 1 meal a day where I really was, in my stride when I was like 303.
Yeah, you were powering.
Yeah. So let it be a cautionary tale to you kids, that you think that, this one, whatever isn't going to, I can recover from this, don't get cocky. Don't do a Carl and get all cocky. Because, All right. But now, today, I'm participating in a fast that Brenda Zorn has organized in her Keto Ninjas group, which is great. By the way, this is a small group. Don't ask to join it. She likes to keep it small.
We do have a group. We have a great group on Facebook. We have, 781 people. So
absolutely. fb.2keto.com will get you there. So what we like to do is every once in a while, a bunch of us say, hey, we're doing a fast this weekend, right? And everybody does it, and it's so cool. So I'm on board for that.
So you're in the first day, right? Because you're 12 hours behind me, yeah.
Yep, I'm in my first day. And what's also cool is I have 2 gigs with a band this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of exercise, moving around and singing my brains out. So it should be a good way to just drop back in.
And hopefully no Taco Bell.
No, there's going to be no Taco Bell. There will be no Taco Bell this weekend. Yes.
You need to pack a fathead pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, Richard, that brings us to the segment of our show that we call Mail.
We're justified and we don't need no alibi.
Mail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, enough of that.
So I've got a message that came in on our Facebook group, and we've just mentioned that, fb.2keto.com if you want to get into the group. And this is from Karen Binder. And she says, thanks for adding me. I've listened to your podcast since week 1. Sadly, I haven't found you earlier. Thank you, Karen. And she really loves our show. She's from Austria, so she's begging excuses for her English. Well, I tell you, her English is better than my German. So. Yeah. Anyway, so she tries to get into keto for 3 weeks, but it won't happen. I really eat no carbs and sugar instead of vegetables and a bit of cheese or some berries. Do I have to fast, eat nothing for 3 days? Would it happen faster? I don't want to lose much weight, but the body fat should disappear that I can gain muscles, which are visible and not hidden under the fat. So my response really to Karen is no, you don't need to fast. Once your body's become good at moving energy from fat cells to your muscles, it's easy to fast, and it does great things to your chronic insulin levels. But really the first goal is to become good at using fat for energy. That's what we really want to do, and that's really why when you first start, you just want to eat from a list of foods that are high in fat to train your body. So basically, you want your body to become good at using fat for energy by giving your body no carbs or very little. And it has no choice. It has to become good at using fat for energy. Once you become good at burning fat, your body will then always have access to energy, and so your appetite should mostly disappear. Then you can eat less fat to use energy stored in your body fat, or eat more fat to store energy in your body fat. So it's really you're totally in control at that point. You eat more fat to put on a bit of weight. You eat less fat to lose a bit of weight. Now, eventually, if you've got a lot of weight to lose and you're continually dropping weight, eventually your appetite will return. It'll return at the point where your body thinks it doesn't have enough body fat, enough stored energy. And that point's going to be different for all of us. It's driven by how much insulin we make. And those of us who were diabetic and made a lot of insulin generally stopped losing weight at a higher set point. And we have to use strategies like fasting or exercise to lower our insulin levels so that we continue losing weight.
Right. And as we saw in the Eating Patterns show, that your insulin level, how much insulin you make when you're fasting, really depends on how heavy you are.
Yeah.
The more fat you have on your body, the higher your basal insulin rate will be.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you get down to less, your insulin level should be lower. And and as Richard said, you then have to, learn how to manage it and keep it off. And I think that's probably where exercise helps a lot more for people like that than simply eating fat.
Yeah, there are certainly strategies for lowering your insulin, but most people think that being fat causes a lot of these problems, such as high basal level of insulin. But it's actually the other way around. The high basal level of insulin underpins the energy that you're storing in your body.
Right.
So really, if you lower your insulin, you'll find that your body fat disappears. And I'll tell you an interesting story.
Okay.
One of my dogs has type 1 diabetes or canine diabetes, and we've been giving her 50 units of insulin twice a day, which is a lot of insulin for a dog.
Yeah.
And she's been putting on weight, and she spends the whole time in the sun trying to get energy, sleeping in the sun because she's cold and it's winter in Canberra, and she's putting on weight, and we try and get her out to exercise. She just doesn't want to exercise. And we found out recently that she has a problem with the thyroid gland. And once we started medicating her to help with her thyroid levels, all of a sudden her blood glucose dropped. We were able to lower the insulin. So we dropped her insulin from 50 down to 25. And in 2 weeks, she lost 10% of her body weight. And she's energetic. She is never cold and lying in the sun. She wants to go chase butterflies and stuff. So, it's remarkable how important insulin is to how much energy we store.
Wow. There you go. So we also got a message in the same forum from Angel M. Chavez, who says, now I have some questions. One thing in particular makes no sense to me. People keep saying you don't have to add a lot of fat to your diet once you're adapted, that you can use your body fat. But if you still don't eat a majority of fat, then what do you eat? Too much protein knocks you out of ketosis, apparently. Too much carbs will do the same. Please help me understand how your intake can change. And so I answered this. I still eat enough protein. That never changes, never goes away. No. I also eat some fat, but I need less to feel full. I only eat 1 meal a day. Well, last week. I will again next week. I can do this, I think, because I'm fat adapted. When there's not enough fat on my plate, my liver starts burning body fat, and that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
So this is the same story.
It is. It comes up a lot, really.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is that a low-carb diet will always be a high-fat diet.
Right.
Even if you don't eat a lot of fat on your plate, your body is getting most of its energy from fat. But if you don't have a lot of fat on your plate, a lot of energy on your plate, it'll get it from body fat until it runs out.
Right. And protein is sort of a dark art, right? I mean, even the experts disagree on protein and how much you should eat. And but I'm a firm believer that I need to have, for my weight, about 100 grams of protein a day. And I'm not going to change that anytime soon. I don't mess with that. I don't overeat it, but I make sure I get enough.
So the final mail that we have is from Kaylee Baker Christoffel. And she says, I'm at a continuing medical education conference. She's a physician's assistant. And I've seen some encouraging and discouraging presentations in regard to our progress with the management of diabetes mellitus type 2 and obesity. It seems that it's pretty universally acknowledged that sugar is harmful, but low-carb and ketogenic diets continue to be presented as hard to follow and dangerous. It took everything I had to not outright disagree, at least verbally, with the presentation by a physician on obesity yesterday, who stated that she won't give up her beans and rice for anything, and therefore doesn't think her patients would. So Kaylee suggests that we please continue talking to your medical providers about what you're doing and about how it's helping you. They're not getting a fair presentation of this approach, and it's a tool that could be extremely beneficial. Carl and I have both found this. We've both found dramatic differences. And it's also cost effective for patients. Kaylee goes on, she says, I'm talking to my colleagues too, but like all humans, we sometimes need to hear things from multiple sources before we give it serious consideration. Medical providers want to do what's right for the patient. They're patients as well themselves, but they're not getting good information on this subject. So please tell your provider what you're doing and why, and refer them to the podcast. Thank you, Kaylee, because we put a lot of references to the literature for skeptical medical providers to chew on for a while.
Right.
So thank you for that. That was an awesome thread that started everyone talking about their experiences with their doctors,
right.
And I agree with her. It's important to include your doctor, even if they disagree with what you're doing. They have to respect the results, and you have to. It's really a good idea to engage them on this, because the opportunity exists for you to show your medical provider something new that may help their other patients. So
and that's exactly what happened with me and Richard. The thing that I take away from Kaylee's message here, which is great, thank you, Kaylee, is that the doctors are kind of clueless. So they, like my doctor's just sort of sitting on the sideline waiting and giving me 6 months to turn all my numbers around. She's particularly worried about cholesterol.
Sure.
And, she's just sort of like, okay, you do what you want. But I think that this fear that the doctors have is endemic.
I think so, yeah.
And I think the biggest concern they have is, okay, it works for you, but it seems like it's ridiculously easy to go off the diet. And when you do, that's where the problems start.
Right.
And they're right about that. And so therefore, because there isn't any support structure that they have control over, that they can bring you to, like a 2 Keto Dudes forum or whatever, that they're a little hesitant because they want you to stay on it, and they realize that it can be hard for people. I mean, look at the challenges that I had this week, and I've lost 60 pounds, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so this can happen. So the issue is that the ketogenic diet isn't dangerous, but doing it and then going off of it, could really be a problem. And so here's my suggestion to all the listeners of 2 Keto Dudes out there. Start a support group.
Yeah.
Start a support group at work.
Good idea.
At school. your peer group. I had lunch with my daughters yesterday and we went to a really nice restaurant and got steaks and stuff. It was great. And they both said this, that when teenage girls get together, and teenage, my oldest daughter's 20, Emmy, when girls get together, they like to eat junk food, and it's a social thing, and they feel pressure that they don't want to, show up with their bacon and cheese crisps and everybody looks horrified at them, yet they're popping Cheetos and Reese's and Starburst and candies and crap, but they like to get together and eat junk food to comfort themselves. So the social problems are the biggest problems. And I told them, I said, well, why don't you educate your friends and maybe start a group?
Yeah,
and,
true.
And start a research group and a support group where you get together maybe once a week and show new science to each other, like Richard and I get together. And I got to tell you, doing this podcast has been my support group. It's been wonderful.
That's exactly how we started. That's how we started, was as a support group to get Carl going, basically, and hopefully help some other people. And then, we started the Facebook group. We started off with another Facebook group and then decided we had to start our own because there were so many people. Yeah. And, the whole thing's blowing,
it's blowing up.
And the whole thing's grown exponentially ever since. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a really good idea. So nobody else is going to do it for you. I think, the early adopters, such as we are, we're natural born influencers, and we should use that for the powers of good.
Yes.
All right. And that gets us to ketophobia, the topic of our show, Richard.
Yeah.
The reason we came to this topic is we interviewed a woman, Carrie Thompson, who I found in another keto group on Facebook. Somebody asked the question, hey, anybody been on this diet for more than 6 weeks? I see a lot of people who are just getting started or, maybe a few months and they're having great success, but I'd like to hear from some people who've been on it for longer. And Carrie piped up and she said, 18 years.
Wow.
And I thought, what? This is great.
Yeah.
Like, we got to talk.
I want to talk to her.
Yeah, we got to talk to her. And so, let's play that conversation that we had now. So, Carrie, welcome to the show. Carrie Thompson.
Thank you.
So, 18 years. Tell us your story.
Well, it's not going to be that exciting. I was just in a bookstore. I'm kind of a nerd, and I saw an Atkins book and just picked it up and read it. I was actually in pretty good shape at the time. I was in my mid-20s. I had worked as a personal trainer, and I have horses, so I'm hauling hay and shoveling poop. I really had no weight loss goals or anything. I have no health problems. I just picked up the book, and it made sense, and I started it and stuck with it.
So you really started a low-carb diet because you were convinced that the carbs were not doing you any good health-wise. You didn't have any symptoms of any kind of metabolic syndrome or anything, huh?
No, not that I knew of. Looking back, and now if I eat too many carbs or something, I know that it gives me insane cravings. And I used to eat a lot of candy. Sweets were my weakness. Twizzlers, Skittles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And after trying it, realizing the way I felt versus the way I felt before, it was obvious.
And did you go to your doctor or anything about it? Were you concerned that it might be a little strange and unknown and maybe even dangerous or anything?
No, I pretty much just did it and stuck with it. Now, I did go through 2 pregnancies where I went off because I didn't, at the time, there was really no literature that I knew of that said it was safe, and safety was my main concern for the babies.
Right.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have totally stayed on. But I gained a lot of weight, had a lot of cravings, felt like crap, looked like crap, and then went back to normal after breastfeeding for a few months and stuff. So
it's fantastic. And you were never heavy?
Well, just during pregnancy and for a short time after.
Yeah, of course. That's expected.
Yeah.
Wow, it's just astounding. And how did you? What was the change in your feeling when you started? And has that feeling lasted the whole time?
Just felt better overall. Just better. Just better.
Just better.
Less food, crappy food cravings. I mean, I've always kind of been interested in fitness and nutrition and stuff, and it just,
yeah.
If you can eat and not crave all kinds of other stuff that isn't good for you, then why not do it?
So, Carrie, you've been on a low-carb diet now for 18 years. Do you think that that experience has changed over time?
No, I don't think so. The only thing really that has changed much for me is with Facebook and all these groups and recipes and stuff. For about 16 of those years, I was pretty bored because A, I hate to cook. B,
Yeah.
I'm not creative whatsoever because it's something I don't like to do as far as cooking and stuff. So now there are countless recipes that are, all over the place instead of just steak and scrambled eggs and bacon and, your main. So that's about the only thing that's changed for me.
All right, I got a story for you, and this is germane to our conversation. I got a call from an investor friend of mine, and he had successfully invested in companies with friends of mine who are now, multimillionaires in the tech businesses. And he had heard the rumblings that this keto thing was taking off. And he knew who I was from my tech podcasts. And he started listening to Keto Dudes at the recommendation of a friend. And then he was like, is that Carl? What? And so he called me up and he asked me what I thought about, the ketogenic diet and does it have legs and all of this, and he's thinking of it as an investment, like he was thinking of, I don't know, starting wellness centers and programs and all this other stuff, the stuff that, whatever. He's looking for a way to turn a dollar, right?
Right.
And he says, the thing I come back to again and again is it looks too good to be true. There's got to be a downside, like for somebody who's got to be on it for a long, long time. It's going to have to kill him or something, right? And I said, no, I don't see a downside. and Carrie, you're living proof of that. I mean,
I guess so.
Yeah. You haven't, when was the last time you went to a doctor?
It's been a while, probably, for blood tests and all that stuff, it's probably been 4 or 5 years. I just don't go unless I'm dying.
Right. And do you know the results of your blood tests? Is this something you can share?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but everything was perfect.
Everything was perfect.
Yeah.
There you go.
Diabetes runs really hard in my family.
Okay.
And the diabetic side also has very high blood pressure, and everybody's on statins and all that, and I'm not. And I finally talked to my mom into this. She criticized for 16 of those 18 years, I guess.
Unbelievable.
And, yeah, then she finally, when she's been on blood pressure meds for, as far as I can remember, forever. And she finally, I guess, got sick of taking 5 blood pressure meds a day, and she was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. Her mother, sister, grandmother, and great-grandmother, I think, were all diabetic. And she finally just started reading, I guess, and decided she'd give it a try. And 3 months in, I think it's been about 3 months, she's off of all but one blood pressure medicine.
It's wonderful.
And no longer diabetic. She's got great blood sugars and stuff, and she's enjoying it.
That's incredible. These are the kinds of stories people need to hear. And that's why we wanted to have you on the show, because, people are afraid of this diet.
Yeah.
And there you go, man. There's nothing healthier.
We've certainly got family members who are like that. In fact, both of our mothers, funnily enough, are both, not. My mother's not necessarily resistant, but she's been a fruit eater for most of her life,
right?
And she finds it sort of incongruous that she's always been told and has always thought that high fat food was bad for you. And so when I first started doing this, she said, "Are you sure? It doesn't make a lot of sense."
Right.
And but I'm living proof. I've been low carb, I guess, for almost a decade.
Yeah.
Except for one period where, under doctors' orders and dietitians' orders, my LDL cholesterol was going up, and so they said you need to go on a special diet to combat that. And I was pre-diabetic as well, and I went on this. It was a high carb, low fat diet, and I became more diabetic. I became very, very sick in that time, and that was just a period of about 3 years in the past decade. Most of the rest of the past decade, I've been low carb. So it's just going on a high carb diet during that time just tipped me over the edge. And I'm just glad I did find keto 2 years ago, and that sort of got me back from the brink.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to hear somebody who's been doing it for almost 20 years because. Yeah, the big problem is that there's no people really having a traditional pattern of eating. Some Inuit tribes are believed to be keto, and the Maasai, and some other tribes, but we don't really have decades-long practice of eating ketogenic.
Well, certainly not in the Western world, right?
No.
We really don't. I mean, it's just anecdotes like Carrie's. And Carrie, the other thing that's amazing to me is that you said your mother, who has diabetes, sits back for 16 of those 18 years, wags her finger at you while you're healthy and she's sick.
Right.
That's crazy. That is the epitome of crazy.
It's insane, but it's hard to. I guess it's hard to turn around what you've been told forever.
Even though you're sick, you're. Wake up, people.
Doctors are telling you this, so it must be true.
I just wonder how they explain it away, right? I mean, you must be one of those 1% of the population that responds well to the ketogenic diet. Your liver must work differently than everybody else's or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I've never mentioned it. Never mentioned it to a doctor or a nurse or anybody. No.
And what's also interesting is it sounds like you didn't play hardball with them. You just set yourself as an example. I mean, I know we fight constantly the urge to quote unquote help people, you see somebody, having in a restaurant, just eating the wrong stuff, and they're obviously sick and tired and fat, and you just want to go over to and smack them and say, I can fix you. But you can't do that, of course. People have to come to this of their own will. Otherwise, you'll ruin it for them.
Right. That's the most I've ever said to anybody other than my mother. With Mom, I can be like, hey, look at me. I've done it for how many years and blah, blah, blah. But the most I ever say to anybody is, hey, I've heard this. Why don't you Google it? And, let them see and do what they're going to do, because I'm not going to convince them. So.
In my case, it's pretty easy. I printed up some business cards, and people might want to do this too, who've had success. I printed up some business cards that simply say, I reversed type 2 diabetes in 2.5 months and lost, 30 some odd pounds, whatever it was. And all without medication and just with good food and a lot of unraveling of conventional wisdom.
Right.
And I send it, put the link to the podcast and stuff. And I think I even put my numbers on the back, what they were at the beginning, what they are now. And when people ask me, because I know a lot of people, and they say, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. How'd you do it? I'd simply take out the card and say, if you're interested, this is how I did it. I don't, it's hard to sit and tell the same story over and over again.
Right.
Do you have the same experience that people, because you're different though, because your physicality probably doesn't look any different now than it did back then.
I have, everybody in my family has diabetes and I don't, or everybody in my family has high blood pressure and I don't, but I'm 42, so it's not like I'm 60 and I mean, my mom had high blood pressure at least, I guess, around her 30s. I don't know about everybody else, but it's not like I'm old enough. I mean, I'm older enough to have high blood pressure and diabetes, obviously, but like I said, I can't say that, I overcame this or, you know.
Well, you certainly prevented it.
I did. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I just tell people, Google it, and if I've been doing it forever, and then if they come back with questions, I'll answer them, but I don't really push it. I want to a lot. But
It's
I don't,
hard.
so.
It's hard to resist. I think
Yeah.
your story is a real inspiration to people who aren't necessarily overweight, but want to be healthy and want to prevent heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and all the diseases of civilization, so to speak. And that's another reason why I wanted you to come on and tell your story. It's just wonderful.
Well, I hope so. I hope if one person changes something, that's a start.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Carrie, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So there you go.
Well, that was
Richard.
fascinating. Yeah, that was fascinating. 18 years, that's a long time.
Yep.
And this has always been the problem is people say, it's short term, it'll help you lose a bit of weight, but after a couple of weeks, you'll go back to eating what you went back, what caused you to have the problems in the first place, and you'll go straight back to being fat and lazy again. And Carrie's perfect example that you just have to get stubborn and just stick out your jaw and say, no, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, kudos to Carrie. I mean, she did it without any support for 16 years. In fact, her family wagging their finger in her face. So we went to our Two Keto Dudes Facebook group and we asked. I basically said, "Hey, Richard and I are doing the show on ketophobia. We'd like to get your experiences with either other people in your life that have a fear of keto or a fear of fat or whatever it is. And, or maybe it was you, did you have it and how did you get over it? So let's read a few of these. You want to start?
Sure. So the first one we had was from Hector Santos and he said, my trainer, he keeps telling me you've dropped your carbs to how many grams? That's not good for you. You won't build muscles that way and you'll enter ketosis, which is very dangerous. Dope. He's trying to get me to ingest brown rice cakes, and even suggests a donut could give me energy. Oh. He's a great trainer, but I don't discuss nutrition with him anymore because he keeps sounding the alarms that I'm about to commit suicide with a keto diet.
Yeah.
Dear oh dear.
Dear oh dear oh dear.
I've been going to personal trainers ever since I came back to Australia in 2006, and my first trainer I still keep in contact with has gone keto himself. And when I first started, he thought, "Oh, that doesn't make sense," and he had me on this diet that was like lots of fruit salad and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But once I started to see results in the keto diet. That was really what got him excited because he'd seen that I was struggling and unable to get anywhere. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this diet really seemed to give me traction. I was having traction with being able to take control of these issues.
All you can do is give people the science and say, you know, if you can, this is the science that I've seen, and these are real studies, right? These are randomized trials, which are the holy grail of scientific studies. Yeah. And if you can find me something, that counters this, I go for it, and let's compare notes. Yeah. And, that has shut many people up, and for better or for worse, in my life. Show me the science. We're going to make T-shirts that say, show me the science. Hashtag 2 Keto Dudes.
Yeah, I want one of those T-shirts.
Yeah, me too. All right, the next one is from Ryan Scott Spletzer, and he says, I never had ketophobia per se, but I always had doubts, I suppose. I'd had various fits and starts with different flavors of low-carb diets in the past, and the inevitable fears that folks try to pass on are usually something along the lines of, okay, that's fine, but losing all that weight that way, you'll just gain it all back and then some. I even had nutritionists and medical professionals tell me this, along with friends and family. I think part of the reason why I could never stick to it in the past up till now, and never understood that this is a lifelong thing for me, is because I never understood the science behind it all. You have the Tim Ferrisses of the world who were on the right track, but just basically telling you, eat this way, trust me. Yeah, really? I mean,
it's true.
It's true. That's right. Yeah. It's a leap of faith. We said this in the Newbie show.
Pretty much.
And also advising to cut out dairy, which I never understood. And Ryan, that's probably because some people have a different reaction to dairy, and not just the sugary dairy, but, even heavy cream.
The proteins in dairy.
The proteins of dairy, yeah.
Some people have specific reactions to the proteins in dairy. I know Professor Tim Noakes says of his banting program, if you're banting and you're having trouble and you're not having success, try excluding dairy because for some people that's an issue.
Right. So he goes on to say, having a sound foundational scientific understanding around why this is the best way for me to eat most of the time and understanding why I'm losing the weight that I've lost, not just the how, was earth-shattering for me. Earth-shattering, Richard.
Earth-shattering. Yeah.
I've known about keto before, but this is the first time, armed with the knowledge of why it works, that I've ever truly felt in control of my body and metabolism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It feels like I have this on autopilot finally, and I'm freed up to think about other things in life. It's truly quite amazing. I couldn't agree more.
No, that started out as what are your fears about keto and ended up being a testimonial for keto. But yeah, it's true. I mean, that control is remarkable.
Right. I have a story of ketophobia from my real life. This is when I started doing Atkins probably in 94, 95, somewhere like around there. And I lived in California, and my wife and I had some friends through the work that I was doing, and we were both working at this place. And we all decided to try it. And I loved it. And I had no problems with it. In fact, it was great for me. But I was heavier than my friend. And my friend basically stopped after a week.
Oh, no.
And I think this might be typical. And he said, I just felt terrible. I felt like I was killing myself. I thought I was ruining my body because I had, I was like nauseous and aggressive. He said he felt aggressive, which is another word for high energy, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
And he thought this was, going to ruin him because he didn't understand that keto flu is an expectable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pretty much think these programs should start out with a disclaimer saying you're going to feel like rubbish for the first 2-3 weeks.
Right.
Get ready, expect it, because it's your body changing how it fuels itself. And once you get past that, you're going to feel awesome. And, that's really the experience that I want to, or that's what I want to explain to people who first start this, saying, having a problem with headaches, whatever.
Yeah.
This too will pass.
And you can read the testimonials on our page and everywhere else. Everybody seems to have the same experience. They go through this flu and then they get over it, and then it's like smooth sailing. All right. So who else replied?
So we've got one from Dusty Christ. My wife's best friend is an MD, and she convinced me that keto will give me a heart attack. Dear. She actually accused me of making up my lab result sheet because it was perfect. And meanwhile, after years on a high-carb, low-fat, low-calorie diet, she's gained half the 100 pounds I lost. And she had to start taking the diabetes meds that I no longer need. And she still tells me I'm going to have a myocardial infarction.
Hey, are you beginning to see a pattern here, kids?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Carrie.
It's remarkable.
She had the same experience for 16 years. Her mother was like, you're going to die, you're going to die. Well, she's dying. It's crazy. All right.
It's incredible.
So this one came from Jesse Dumoncho. For me, when I tried everything else, I tried what seemed crazy, and it seems to work. Mostly convinced by the different podcasts I listen to.
Oh.
I'm trying to brainwash myself against conventional wisdom, as most Americans are fat, so why listen to them, right? Do what skinny people who used to be overweight do, not what the book says. Yeah, it's like learning from an instructor versus a book written 50 years ago. By the way, I hit my 30-pound loss this morning in 3 months.
Oh, well done, Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible that a lot of what we're taught is that fat causes us to be fat, and that putting on weight is a function of not exercising enough or just being too gluttonous and eating too much food. And these things are, there's a simpler biochemical explanation for why there exists in the world people who are obese and hungry and don't have the energy to do any exercise.
Yeah.
There's no other explanation for those three things all happening in the one animal.
Right.
So we had one more from Chandra Jocelyn Pyle. And she says, I'm sure you want to mention health professionals. I went for my last blood test and I'd been fasting as usual. I didn't know that 12 to 15 hours was the range that they like for these tests. When I wandered in saying, oh, yes, I've not eaten for 20 hours, the nurse went ballistic, rang my doctor, Rang the blood lab, told me to eat. I must be starving, blah, blah, blah. They, of course, thus refused to do the test until the next day. She even told me to eat my evening meal and to get up at midnight for a snack.
That's insane.
Before coming in for an 8 a.m. blood test. So it was only 8 hours since I last ate. Looking it up, she was certainly wrong about that. I did say to her that it should be at least 12 hours for a fast, but I had her so rattled she probably had something to eat after I left the room.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I did not have an overnight snack as I'm trying to lower my fasting insulin level. I think it was still over 15 hours before I had the next test as I had to wait there so long. Interestingly, I was telling another nurse friend about having my fasting insulin tested. I specifically asked for it, and neither she nor any of her nursing colleagues had ever heard of it. Jeez. I now consider it almost the primary blood marker that I want under control.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you, Chandra. I had this problem when I went for my last blood test. I'd been 18 hours fasted, just intermittently fasting like I normally do, and the nurse pitched a fit and basically said I had to get my doctor on the phone to talk to her to confirm that it was okay that I did that. So yeah. I totally recognize that.
So it seems that a lot of the reasons that people fail on this low-carb, high-fat diet isn't because of the science and isn't because they're not doing it right. It's because of people's fears, their own fears that are nagging them in the back of their head. It's very easy to rely on conventional wisdom and get out of ketosis. And the fear from their doctors and fear from family members. And, you know, I think we're going to make those shirts, man. Show me the science with a hashtag 2KetoDudes at the bottom.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because every time I've done that, the line goes dark. Like they don't respond. And the reason is because A, they probably don't want to do the science. They don't want to find out that you're right, because then you'll be right. And that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Or they just don't care enough, and they think that, why do I have to do science? I know it's to be true.
Okay, Carl. So that's all about ketophobia, but I think I want to hear some recipes.
Recipes.
You say you're due for a little
recipes. Never gets old, does it?
It doesn't. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to be doing it in 2 years' time, and people will be wondering where we got that from.
Right. Well, I'm going to let you go first because yours might be a component of mine. So go ahead.
Sure. Well, I've got a recipe, and this one, it's on my blog, easylowcarb.com, and it's a recipe for a simple tomato sauce. And the recipe was born out of necessity. Basically, we had a couple of kilos of tomatoes getting overripe from our tomato vines. Sorry, I'm going to keep saying tomato or tomato. I don't know which one's going to come out.
Yeah, you're Australian, so you're
tomato
conflicted.
Is Australian,
I understand.
So, yeah. I lived in America for eight years, so and I know whenever I say tomato, Americans sort of go blank. So
tomato sounds more sophisticated, so go with that.
Okay, tomato sauce. So anyway, so here's the thing. What I do is I make a big old pot of tomato sauce, and the recipe is on the blog, but basically I have a load of tomatoes, onions, some chilies, garlic, capsicum. I threw in a bunch of things that were growing in the garden. Towards the end of the summer, my garden produces a lot of these vegetables and fruit. But you can just go to a fruit market and get old tomatoes. You can get old tomatoes and just cut the gnarly bits off them. Just chuck them into a large pot.
Skin and all.
And what I do is I first of all, I start with a little bit of lard. I put the onions and garlic and these vegetables in just to soften them first. And then I chuck all my tomatoes in. I add peppers and I add a little bit of chicken stock and I add some salt, and I've got all of the quantities on my website.
Great. And
I've done the calculation for exactly how many kilocalories of energy you're going to get from protein, fat, and carbohydrates in this.
Okay.
But the real trick with this recipe is once you've stewed this up for a couple of hours and you put a stick blender in to really blend it down, I then freeze the batch into ice cube trays. And so I put in 4 or 5 ice block trays full of these tomato cubes, basically, freeze them, and then pull them out of the ice cube trays and put them in plastic bags. And I have freezer drawers full of these tomato puree, 20-gram tomato puree ice blocks. And now when I need to spark up a recipe, maybe I've got some meat, some pulled meat that I want to give it maybe a little bit of a barbecue flavor, I'll chuck a couple of these ice cubes into the meat in the fry pan, put a bit of maybe a bit of vinegar, and vinegar and tomato makes a great combination for a barbecue flavor. Maybe a bit of Worcestershire sauce as well. Really easy way to make turn a plain meat into a barbecue meat. So that's my recipe, and really it's a technique, and that is to use ice cube trays to portion a large batch. Basically, I'm making a large batch of, several gallons batch, and then I'm transferring that to ice cube trays and then storing it in my freezer till I need them.
And it's really important to reiterate that step of putting it through a sieve or a strainer.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because you want to get all those, those skins out of it. But, yeah. So that's my tomato sauce recipe, or my tomato sauce recipe, if you prefer. So what have you got, Carl?
Well, today I have a recipe that I found online at wickedstuffed.com, and this is a keto chicken parm.
Yeah, I love chicken parm.
And zoodles, too, which are zucchini noodles, which it's a sort of a nice side dish. Anyway, and this is why I wanted you to go first, because, chicken parm has tomato sauce, and tomato sauce is one of those hard things. I mean, I don't know how many net grams of carbs are in your tomato sauce, but it's probably low because you started with fresh ingredients, right?
Yeah. So net grams in 120 gram ice cube is 1 gram of net carbohydrates.
That's really awesome, actually.
And that's from tomatoes and onions. They're both quite carby, so that does a good job.
Fun. So this is at chickenparm.2keto.com. That'll take you there. And I'm just going to read it because the story behind it is great. And I love people who experiment and then come to the magic place, right? My husband has been requesting this recipe once a week since I threw it together one night as a total fluke of culinary magic. It's certainly not original. People have been making pork rind crusts for a while, and I've been making Parmesan crust for even longer. But one night I combined the two, and it has been Italian bliss ever since in our house. The breading does really make it crispy. A second trick is to make sure that you cook the chicken on a roaster rack or other oven-safe rack so that it crisps up on all sides and doesn't stick to the pan or sit in its own juices. And I would add that if you have a convection oven, you can get that stuff even crispier.
Yeah, it'll dry it out nicely.
Yeah. My final tip is to make sure the zoodles, and there's a link to a zoodler, which is a spiral noodle maker from zucchini, are only cooked for a few minutes. Otherwise, they'll get soft and no fun. They should be slightly crispy and fresh. And this is 5 net carbs per serving. So you take 4 chicken breasts and that you pound and tenderize with a hammer, a kitchen hammer.
Yeah. So do you use cling wrap over the top? And
that's how I do it.
Over the top of the chicken?
I use parchment or wax paper or cling wrap or something.
I use a rolling pin as well.
Rolling pin works even better because then you don't get the holes as much. Yeah. So you want to flatten them out. And that's really good to make them cook quicker and more evenly. Because chicken, as you know, has...
consistently,
Yeah, because chicken, as you know, has high parts and low parts. 2 cups of crushed pork rinds. You can get these in pretty much any grocery store. If you can't find them in the potato chip aisle, look in the Spanish or Mexican section. 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. 4 small to medium-sized zucchinis. And, of course, that's for the zoodles, right?
That's for the zoodles, yeah.
You can choose to do that or not, of course. 2 tablespoons of garlic oil. And, of course, if you don't have garlic oil, you can use regular olive oil and just add some garlic to it. It's no big deal. 1 teaspoon of garlic salt. I might want to use sea salt if I have actual real garlic there. whatever. You learn these things. You can mess around with the recipes. 1 cup of naturally low carb tomato sauce, and she says she uses Mezzetta, Mezzetta, or Rouse, Rao. ', which I've used Rouse.
Yeah, I've heard Rouse. Yeah.
Yep. Of course, if you're like Richard, you make your own.
Yeah, and if you want it to be that sort of tangy, ketchupy flavor, you add a bit of vinegar to it. Add a bit of apple cider vinegar.
Yep. And then, of course, a cup of mozzarella cheese. So you preheat the oven to 375. You pound and tenderize your chicken breasts in a plastic bag or container. You combine the pork rinds, Parmesan cheese, and Italian seasoning. Now, there's a step missing here, and that is I put my pork rinds and Parmesan cheese in a food processor and just,
blend it up. Yeah.
Blend it up and get those particles very small.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use a pestle and mortar because that would grind the pork rinds flat. So you really want a spinning blade to do that.
Yep. So then take that chopped or food processed pork rinds and Parmesan cheese and Italian seasoning, put it in a plastic bag, add your chicken breasts to the bag, and shake them up until totally covered. Shake and bake. You place your coated chicken breasts on a roaster rack or oven baking sheet and sprinkle about a half a cup of mozzarella cheese on each chicken breast. I'm not so sure I would do that right away. I would probably cook them breaded first.
Yeah. You don't want the mozzarella to get burned, so you put it right at the end to just melt over. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you can just broil it for like a minute to melt the cheese. So then you cook for 30 to 45 minutes or until they reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit. It'll take longer if they're larger. And then there's the zoodle recipe, but I would just say that when those chicken breasts are done, then you go back and add the mozzarella. That's what I did. I added the mozzarella afterwards, and it was better because the chicken under the mozzarella is also crispy that way.
Yeah. So you've actually done this recipe, right? You're not just reading off a website.
No, I did it. I didn't do the zoodles, but I did the chicken, and the only difference that I made was I cooked the chicken breasts until they were crispy, put the mozzarella on, and then I put them under the broiler so that they don't, and you got to watch them under the broiler because that cheese melts really fast.
It'll go quickly, yeah.
It might even be safer. And I didn't have a problem with burning because I only did it for like a minute. But it might be safer just to keep the mozzarella in the oven. It'll just melt really quickly. That's it. Little sauce over that.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, I put the sauce in a little saucepan on the stove and then just added it afterwards.
A little dollop of sauce on the top of each piece of chicken. Yeah, yes, nice.
Yeah, nice. Or you could do what my wife does and just put the sauce on the side, or not even eat sauce. She doesn't really like tomato sauce, but so I put it on the side and then you dunk.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. So that's our recipe for the week. And now we're going to have to come up with 2 new recipes for next week.
Yeah, that's right. I actually have something in store that I think will knock you out, but I have to try it first.
Yeah, I've got something in store that will knock you out. So.
All right. Recipes will be great. So, of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something that you don't agree with, some more research that you found to support or refute what we've said, send it by emails to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website in the comments section. Also, of course, join our Facebook group, fb.2keto.com. That's it.
Awesome.
Keep calm and keto on, friends.
Keto on, Carl.
And don't let the naysayers get you down. Don't be afraid.
No.
All right, we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.